Tonight is Mosiah chapter 19.
And it came to pass that the army of the king returned, having searched in vain for the people of the Lord. And now behold, the forces of the king were small, having been reduced, and there began to be a division among the remainder of the people. And the lesser part began to breathe out threatenings against the king, and there began to be a great contention among them.
Verse 1 says the army of the king returned. The army of the king returned from doing what? Again, in chapter 17 was when Abinadi was put to death, and then chapter 18, Alma started basically the church in meeting in the wilderness and hiding and meeting in secret, and he was baptizing in a place called the Waters of Mormon, and it was a place was kind of hidden in amongst the trees, and so for a while when anybody from the king would come, they would go hide in the trees, this way they wouldn't be seen, but then as the group grew, it got up into the hundreds, so it was no longer feasible to really quickly run and hide. They were breaking into multiple congregations, and so it was really catching on. And so we were saying how probably the king must have noticed how maybe on Sundays the towns seemed pretty empty because everybody was going down to the Waters of Mormon or to the area of Mormon to meet with Alma or whoever. So finally the king sent his army to calling them traitors, and as if they were getting an army together to try to take over the land, which was the farthest thing from their mind. And so he sent the army to put a stop to it, but they found out ahead of time the army was coming, so then they went ahead and left that area to go to a different area, so the army came and lo and behold, they were gone. And so now in chapter 19 it says that it began with the army returning, it says having searched in vain for the people of the Lord, right, because they were no longer there. Right? And so now it says that the forces of the king were small, having been reduced. Right? Those who were converted, right, and joined in with Alma's group, they left with them. So the forces of the king were smaller because they had less people now. A lot of people had left town, right? Because they were them, or they were us, and now they're them. So they went ahead and moved on. So right, so now the forces are reduced. The vision among the remaining people, and some were threatening the king, and so now there's great contention. Now, even if they didn't actually join in with the group, I mean, they had to see that there was joy there, that people are having a good time, people are leaving, they're running away. And I'm missing out on it. I'm stuck here with this king who seems to be going down with the ship. All right, and so so as they see him perhaps doing things wrong, whatever, now it's more noticeable. All right, so they have less patience with it because they're sensing it. Maybe this wasn't the wonderful king we thought that he was. Now he's showing his true colors here.
And now there was a man among them whose name was Gideon, and he being a strong man and an enemy to the king, therefore he drew his sword and swore in his wrath that he would slay the king. And it came to pass that he fought with the king, and when the king saw that he was about to overpower him, he fled and ran and got upon the tower which was near the temple. And Gideon pursued after him, and was about to get upon the tower to slay the king. And the king cast his eyes round about towards the land of Shemlon, and behold, the army of the Lamanites were within the borders of the land.
It's introducing another, I'll say, character to the story, all right, some man named Gideon. And now was Gideon part of Alma's group? That doesn't say for sure one way or the other, right? But since Alma and his group have more or less left town, and it's just in the verse before saying how those who were left behind were having contention with the king, and they weren't having what was going on, and then it goes right into Gideon. I would say that Gideon was probably one of the ones who was still there. So it says that he was an enemy to the king, and he felt that at some point he's going to kill the king. So he takes action, right? He chases the king down and fights with him, and is about to try to kill him when the king goes up on the tower, running away since he was such a coward. He looks and says, "Uh-oh, the Lamanites are coming of all times, right? When the army is smaller, our people are in disarray." Now remember that these are the Nephite people, Noah and his family and kingdom, whatever. These are the Nephite people. Sometimes you can get confused because we typically think Lamanites are the enemy, the Nephites are the good guys, and the Lamanite is the enemy. All right, but all these people were Nephites. Alma was Nephite, Noah was Nephite. So all the Nephites. Well, now here comes the real enemies coming in just at the worst possible time here, and while the king's being chased around and they're all in disarray. So.
And now the king cried out in the anguish of his soul, saying, "Gideon, spare me, for the Lamanites are upon us, and they will destroy us. Yea, they will destroy my people." And now the king was not so much concerned about his people as he was about his own life. Nevertheless, Gideon did spare his life. And the king commanded the people that they should flee before the Lamanites, and he himself did go before them, and they did flee into the wilderness with their women and their children.
The the king seeing the Lamanites coming, so what was his first thought upon seeing the enemy coming? Here's my chance to escape, right?
Yeah, there's still a possibility.
Yeah, don't kill me now. The enemy's coming. The people need the king to be intact because the enemy's coming. So this way we can fight off the enemy. In verse 8, he says he wasn't so concerned about his people; it was about his own life. Right? It was just a chance for him to try to escape. And so, sure enough, he says in verse 9, as he commanded the people that they should flee. Right? So where was the king in this group? It says he himself did go before them and did flee into the wilderness. Okay, so he's leading the way to run away. Of course, this is written, by those who were perhaps more critical of what the king was doing, and so this is written by the Nephi people. So this was what they witnessed, right? So they were not sympathetic to the king and his antics, and so they wrote down what they saw. But here the king could care less about the people, and he just wanted to run away himself, and so he did.
And it came to pass that the Lamanites did pursue them, and did overtake them, and began to slay them. Now it came to pass that the king commanded them that all the men should leave their wives and their children, and flee before the Lamanites. Now there were many that would not leave them, but had rather stay and perish with them, and the rest left their wives and their children, and fled.
Even in fleeing, right, they caught up to them, right, the Lamanites did, and were beginning to kill them, right, and so now the king, in another act of heroism and wisdom, tells them to do what? These women and children are slowing us down, right? Let's just leave them behind and run, okay? And so let's not bother with trying to bring our families along. Let's just save ourselves. Right? Some of them that was asking too much, and that's good. Basically, I'd rather stay here and be killed than to live like a coward, to run away knowing I left my wife and children behind to be killed. So they said, no, we're not going to do that. So they said, no, we'll just stay here with our children and wives, and whatever happens, happens. Right, so some stayed, but some did listen, and some went with the king and left their families behind.
And it came to pass that those who tarried with their wives and their children caused that their fair daughters should stand forth and plead with the Lamanites that they would not slay them. And it came to pass that the Lamanites had compassion on them, for they were charmed with the beauty of their women. Therefore the Lamanites did spare their lives, and took them captives, and carried them back to the land of Nephi, and granted unto them that they might possess the land, under the conditions that they would deliver up King Noah into the hands of the Lamanites, and deliver up their property, even 1/2 of all they possessed, 1/2 of their gold and their silver, and all their precious things, and thus they should pay tribute to the king of the Lamanites from year to year.
The ones who stayed behind had somebody to be their spokesman. So they sent out the women to speak on their behalf, to try to convince the Lamanites in this case to not just kill them all. Figuring that again, maybe they wouldn't be so quick to want to kill young girls or young ladies here. And I noticed in 13 it says they caused that their fair daughters should stand forth and plead. I mean, they're pretty daughters. That's what I mean. They sent these young women out, and so they talked to the enemy, and so they had compassion on them, right? It says they were charmed with the beauty of their women, and so therefore they agreed not to kill them. Right? In fact, they said, okay, you can stay in the land, right? But now it'll be a new system here, and a new set of rules that we're gonna, you're gonna pay us half of what you have, and so you won't leave the land, and you're gonna pay tribute to the king of the Lamanites. Also, they wanted King Noah delivered, right? They were allowed to stay and possess the land and live there basically under bondage and under certain rules, but they were not going to be killed. They were going to be spared. Okay, so that was the deal. So it did work out for them by staying behind and by staying with the women, because they were able to speak on their behalf.
And now there was one of the sons of the king among those that were taken captive, whose name was Limhi. And now Limhi was desirous that his father should not be destroyed. Nevertheless, Limhi was not ignorant of the iniquities of his father, he himself being a just man. And it came to pass that Gideon sent men into the wilderness secretly to search for the king and those that were with him. And it came to pass that they met the people in the wilderness, all save the king and his priests.
All right, so now that the king has run away, so the people who were left, of course, were without a king. So they looked to the king's sons, and so it says that one of the sons was named Limhi, and so they were going to more or less look to him as the new leader. Even though he says in 17, I mean, he knew that his father was not a good guy, right? But yet, he wasn't looking for him to be killed necessarily. So he's probably trying to figure out some way to avoid that part of the agreement that the father would be delivered up. But Gideon's still around, right? So Gideon, who was ready to kill the king before, says, okay, here's a chance to have it done even a different way, right? So says that Gideon went to look for the king, and it says that, well, he didn't find him, but he did find all the rest of the people. Okay, so, and notice who the ones who actually, I'll say, escaped was who?
The king and his priests,
Right.
the bad guys.
Right, the king and his priests who were really the inner core of the bad guys, if you will, right from the start, right? Those were the inner circle, the one, and it was all the priests of King Noah, and minus one who used to be one of the priests, which Alma was one of the priests of King Noah, right? But when he heard the words of Abinadi, he had realized that was not the right thing to do anymore, so that's why he left, right? But now all the rest of them, were still the evil priests of King Noah, they all escaped together, and they even left all the rest of the people behind. As you can see, they ran off and saved themselves, and so now the rest of the people were found. But they're able to be brought into the rest of the kingdom here that's being formed under the Lamanite rule.
Now they had sworn in their hearts that they would return to the land of Nephi, and if their wives and their children were slain, and also those that had tarried with them, that they would seek revenge, and also perish with them. And the king commanded them that they should not return, and they were angry with the king, and caused that he should suffer even unto death by fire. And they were about to take the priests also, and put them to death, and they fled before them.
Remembering that these were all the ones who left the wives and children behind, okay, even the ones that they found now, right? So these were all the men who had agreed to run away and leave their wives and children behind, so they wouldn't slow them down. So I guess even the ones that did so, I mean, they were still not happy with the king for encouraging them to do that, even though they didn't have to follow his orders, but they did. So they were saying if they found out their wives and children were killed, they were going to take it out on the king, right? So the king in his wisdom said, go back with Gideon, stay here. This way you won't find out if your wives and children were killed, right? So if you don't go back, you're not going to know. So they told them to stay, right? And so upon doing that, it says that finally having had enough of the king, they put him to death. It says, and they put him to death how? By fire, okay? So now whether this was a self-fulfilling prophecy, whether they had remembered the words of Abinadi or just did it and it was fulfilled, nonetheless, that was Abinadi said. That was what Abinadi has said, was that whatever you do to me is going to happen to you too. And so there it was. All right, so even as he had Abinadi killed that way, so he was killed the same way and burned to death. It works out the way God says it's going to work out. And they were going to do the same to the priests, but the priests learned well from the king, so they ran away. Right? They ran away, and so they escaped that particular penalty, if you will.
And it came to pass that they were about to return to the land of Nephi, and they met the men of Gideon. And the men of Gideon told them of all that had happened to their wives and their children, and that the Lamanites had granted unto them that they might possess the land by paying a tribute to the Lamanites of 1/2 of all they possessed. And the people told the men of Gideon that they had slain the king, and his priests had fled from them farther into the wilderness. And it came to pass that after they had ended the ceremony, that they returned to the land of Nephi, rejoicing, because their wives and their children were not slain, and they told Gideon what they had done to the king.
Now they encounter Gideon and his men, and so they are told their wives and their children are okay, and so they're happy to be able to return, even though it'll be under the Lamanite rule, right? But they fill them in. This is what we did to the king and his priests, and now we're able to be reunited with our family. And so they're going to go back to this as they went. They returned rejoicing because their wives and children were not slain. Okay, they were able to be restored to their families at this time.
And it came to pass that the king of the Lamanites made an oath unto them that his people should not slay them. And also Limhi, being the son of the king, having the kingdom conferred upon him by the people, made oath unto the king of the Lamanites that his people should pay tribute unto him, even 1/2 of all they possessed.
Right, so this was the official agreement at that time. Then, right, we already said that Limhi was taking over as the next king, so it says that he's installed as the next king, and so between him and the king of the Lamanites, they agree. Okay, I'll agree to pay you half what we have. Agree to not kill us. Right, that's exactly it. Right, so because they were the enemy, they had captured them, and they could have certainly done that. Right, but they agreed to not kill them, and so that was the arrangement.
And it came to pass that Limhi began to establish the kingdom and to establish peace among his people. And the king of the Lamanites set guards round about the land, that he might keep the people of Limhi in the land, that they might not depart into the wilderness. And he did support his guards out of the tribute which he did receive from the Nephites. And now King Limhi did have continual peace in his kingdom for the space of 2 years, that the Lamanites did not molest them, nor seek to destroy them.
Having made that arrangement, so that now they're able to live peacefully, or at least, and that they weren't at war or battle. And it says that the king of the Lamanites set up guards round about to make sure that they weren't going to try to escape this arrangement. Okay, and now why wouldn't the king of the Lamanites want them to escape?
Because they're paying them.
Because they're paying them, right? Right. Why lose a paying customer, right? So and how could they? How could he afford to pay the salary of the guards? So right, he took out of the money that they were paying in and used that to pay the guards. And I'm sure had plenty left over. So it was a nice little business he had going here. So for the space of 2 years, they had some peace in the land, and so. What does that give you a hint of? That it says that for 2 years they had peace in the land.
There's a war coming.
Right, there's something else going to happen then after that, right? After the